In this video, we are going to go over 10.0 update equip. All right, so I have it downloaded and open up in Racket. So let's go over the problem. Problem A, finish the uncompleted steps X updated design above for both weapon and player. So we can see that both the data description and interpretation is done. We have to do 1B, 3, and 4 for both weapon and structure. Weapon and player, I mean. Okay, so let's just review the weapon structure. So weapon is a structure that has the field name, which is a string, and name is the name of the weapon. A class, right? Class is the name of what type of character that can wield this weapon. All right. So class is one of the string knight or the string mage, and the interpretation is the type of a character in a video game. Next is the damage, and damage is a number, right? It's the number of HP it deals. Okay. So let's do 1B, 3, and 4 for weapon. Pause the video and try to do that. I'm gonna go for spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you guys took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. So 1B, if using define struct, write all the accessor signatures for weapon. So by virtue of this define struct wep, we get wep-name that consumes a wep and produces a string. Wep-class that consumes a weapon and reduces a class, and weapon-damage that consumes a weapon and produces a number, like so. Okay, so that is the accessor signatures done. All right, now we move on to data examples. So let's come up with some examples, all right, for some weapons. I'm gonna do define sword make wep. So we'll just make it sword as the name. Who can wield this? Well, the class of knights, right? So again, the second field of weapon is a class, and it's either knight or mages. All right, so only knights can wield this weapon. We'll say it has 10 damage. All right, let's do one more. So define wand. We'll say make wep. We'll say wand is the name, and only mages can wear this. All right, so we'll say damage is 20. All right, let's do 2 more actually. So define longsword. All right, we're going to make wep, and this is going to be longsword is the name. And again, only knights can wield it. It has 30 damage, and likewise, let's do one more for the mage. So staff is going to be make wep. Wizard's staff is going to be the name this time. Only mages for the class can wield this. And we'll say it has 50 damage, like so. Alright, so those are good enough examples done. Hopefully we fleshed it all out. Next is a function template that processes this data. So we gotta do wep-temp is a template that consumes a weapon. We don't know what it'll produce yet because we are just laying out a good foundation. So what should we call this input variable? Let's call it WP, short for weapon. And likewise, we probably want to take apart the given weapon like so, weapon-name, the class of the given weapon, and then weapon-damage of the given weapon. All right, so that is the template part done. Gonna check myself off for that. Okay, so we have to do the same for player, I mean, as well. So pause the video and try to do 1B, 3, and 4 for the define struct player. All right, I'm gonna go over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it. All right, so let's just go over the steps. So 1B, define, if using define struct, write all the accessor signatures. So player-name is a function that we get that consumes a player and produces a string, and likewise player-equip consumes a player and produces a wep. Okay, so accessor signatures done, easy peasy. Next, let's come up with a few examples. All right, so define. Let's give us some memorable names. Harry Potter is going to be a make player, right? Harry is the name. And we're going to give him the wand as a weapon, right? For the second argument in equip here. Let's do one more. So define samurai, Samu, or I, Jack. Make player name is Jack, and we'll give him a sword. Okay. So that is good enough for examples. Done. Now let's do a template that processes the data. So player dash temp is going to be a template that consumes a player. We don't know what it'll produce yet. Okay. And we are just laying out a good foundation here. Let's call the input variable ply. All right. And likewise, we probably want to take it apart. So player dash name of ply, and then player dash equip of ply. Likewise, the equip is a reference to a weapon, right? To the weapon structure, like so. So we should probably wrap it around a helper function, like so. We're going to call it wep dash temp. All right. Okay. That's a good foundation, and we are done there. Okie dokie. So now let's move on to problem B. So problem B, in video games, players can only equip a weapon that is of their same class, right? If a mage tries to equip a sword, the game would not let them, and their equip would remain the same. Let's also prevent the player from down equipping their weapon by making it so they will always equip the weapon with the most damage, right? So here it is, right? So where is our players right here? So right now Harry has a wand, but let's imagine he has a staff, right? Let's prevent him from downgrading to wielding a wand, right? Because it's likely he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stick with a more powerful weapon that has 50 damage, right? That's what it means in this description here, all right? So design the update equip that takes a player and a weapon and produces a player that fulfills the mechanics above, right? All right, so I'm going to scroll down here and we're going to do how to design functions for update equip. All right, so pause the video and try to work on this on your own. I'm going to go over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you guys took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. Okay. So we need the signature, and here is a good amount of information for the signature. So we're going to have to call the function update-equip. It's going to consume a player and a weapon, right? Takes a player and a weapon. The order is important here because it's not going to pass the auto grader without it. All right, so you should be able to extract the signature from this sentence and produces a player that fulfills the mechanics above. All right. Okay, so that signature next to the purpose, replace the player's equip field if the given weapon is of the same class as the player and is stronger, more damage. Okie dokie. Signature purpose next to the stub, so define update equip ply, and we call it the weapon WP, and then it's going to have to produce a player. So let's just spit out the given player that we've given in as input back out because we need it to run against the tests. So that is signature purpose stub done. Let's move on to the examples. Check expect update equip. All right, so Harry Potter is the player we have up here, and he has a wand right now, right? So what happens if the second argument to update equip, right, the weapon is a staff? Well, we probably want a make player where the name remains the same and he has now upgraded to a staff, right? Like so. Let's do more examples here. So check expect update equip of Harry Potter, and let's say he's trying to wield a sword, right? So update equip Harry Potter wants to wield a sword, right? Well, he can't, right? He's a mage, right? So we should probably produce make player where the name is the same and his equipment is the exact same, right? Which is a wand, right? So we could just replace this with Harry Potter himself, right? It should be the same thing. So either way works, right? I'm just going to leave it this way because it's a little more verbose. But if we change this, then probably have to change it. Anywho, I'm just going to leave it for now. Let's do one more test. So check, expect, update, equip. All right, so Samurai Jack. So right now, Samurai Jack has a sword, right? What if he wants to wield a sword, right? Kind of doesn't make sense. But it's something that we're going to have to count for. So if he has a sword and he's wielding a sword, then likewise, we should produce a player where his name remains the same and he's still wielding that sword, all right? Likewise, let's do one more test where we upgrade him to the, what is it? Where's the weapon actually? This up here is called a long sword. Okay. Long sword, then he should have a long sword in his equipment slot. Like so. All right, so those are 4 tests done. Let's run our test against it. And we get a bunch of mismatches. Make player Harry. And then this is the equip field, right? Make weapon. Wand, mage 20. He's trying to wield a staff right now. So this, right, this case. A lot of mismatches here. All right. So it should be staff. Right. Update equip here. He should be trying to wield the staff. Like so. Anywho, going to comment the stub out. And we're going to get a template that consumes a player. Like so. Use this as starting code. Like so. And it's going to have a second argument weapon. Okay, so let's check ourselves done for all of those steps. Did a good amount of them. So signature purpose stub, that's done. Examples, we just finished off. We just got the template done. And now comes the hardest part, coding the body of the function. So now really pause the video. Hopefully there should be all the mental scaffolding needed to solve the problem. I'm going to go for spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you guys took a good swing at it. So now let's go over it together. So looking at the signature, right, this has to produce a player, right? So this, right, the only thing that produces a player is make player, right? All right, so here the name stays the same in all these scenarios. The name doesn't change when you equip a weapon, right? So we can just leave that alone. But what about this case, right? Weapon temp, and then we're going to grab the current equipment, the current weapon out of the player. So this is of type weapon, right? So player-equip gives us a weapon. So what do we want to do here, right? Reading the problem statement, we're going to replace the player's equip field if the given weapon is of the same class as the player and is stronger. All right. So what we want for this function to do is we probably want it to decide the weapon, right? And that is going to take the player's weapon and the one that we're trying to equip, which is stored in WP. All right. This second argument to update equip. All right, for all these. So we made a wish list, right? It reads pretty nicely. So now we have to write the function and follow the steps for decide weapon. All right. So decide-wep is going to be a function that consumes 2 weapons. All right. Whoops. And what should it produce? It should produce a weapon. All right. It's going to decide between these 2 weapons. So this is going to be produce. The purpose, right, is going to be produces the second given weapon if it is of the same class as the first given weapon and is stronger. All right. So produce the second weapon here only if the first one is of the same class as this one and we're stronger, right? Otherwise, we're going to produce the first given weapon. All right. Because this fulfills this purpose over here. All right. So that's signature purpose stub. Let's stub this out. So define decide-wep what should we call these? We'll call it old and new. All right, we could call it WP1, WP1, WP2, but it's like one letter typo. So I'm gonna call it old and new, and we should produce a weapon. So for this W1, we're just gonna spit out one of them for the stub. So now let's write some examples here. All right, so examples is gonna be very similar to the ones we did above here, right? So Harry right now has a wand. So decide-wep, this Harry Potter has a wand right now. And we should produce, right? Given decide-wep, wand, and staff, which one's better, right? They're of the same class, right? So we should produce the staff because it's the same class and it has more damage, all right? So I'm gonna copy and paste this down. Let's do sword and staff. All right, sword and staff. According to the purpose statement here, right? Produce a second weapon, given wep, if it is of the same class. Sword is not of the same class. Sword are for warriors and staffs are for mages. So we should not produce the second given weapon, right? This is the first given weapon. So we should not produce the second given weapon. That means that all we have left is the first given weapon. So there we go. And let's just do a few more. All right, so given sword, sword, right? It doesn't matter. We should reduce the sword. All right. What if we're given long sword first? And then sword, right? So this one is where the stronger weapon is in the first given argument, and the weaker one is in the second given argument to decide weapon, right? Well, we should produce the stronger one of the two, right? All right, because, you know, the second given weapon is of the same class as the first one, right? These are both, you know, swords for warriors and is stronger. That doesn't satisfy that case, right? The sword is weaker than this long sword. Therefore, we should produce the first argument because we're not producing the second given weapon. Like so. So hopefully those are enough tests. We're going to run and we get a bunch of mismatches here, but that's fine. Comment out the stub and we're going to grab a template for weapon because it consumes a weapon. And we wrote some starter code here that we can scaffold off of. So decide-wep, 6 and 2 arguments instead of 1. So old and new. Likewise, we had to do this taking apart here of this. All right. This is a good scaffold, like so. And now that is the template done for decide weapon. We did the signature and purpose and examples for 2. Now, try to code the body for decide-wep. Hopefully this is all the mental scaffolding needed to solve the problem for decide weapon. I'm going over spoilers in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so I'm assuming that you took a good swing at it, so now let's go over it together. All right, so here's decide weapon. Let's factor out what we don't need, all right? We don't need the weapon name. That's irrelevant to this problem, this purpose statement here. So let's just delete those. All right, now next, let's say according to this, right, produce the second given wep if the first is of the same class as the first given wep and is stronger. So there's an if here, right? We have to either produce the first given weapon or the second one. So we'll likely need an if. You can use a con here if you'd like. Either one is good. All right, so if, and then we're going to need some condition. And that condition is going to be if the weapons are of the same class. So we're going to take 2 classes in here and compare them like so. All right. So how do we compare them? Well, classes are just strings, right? So a class, we're going to look at our data definition for the weapon class here. Class is this, and we have to go look at the type definition. It's either knight or mage. So there's strings, right, over here. So we have to compare them with string equal. String equal, All right. All right. Likewise, all right, so that's one condition done, right? If they're the same class, we have to do another condition here, right? produce the second weapon if it is the same class as the first game weapon and is stronger, right? So that and here is another condition to our if, like so. So how do we determine if it's stronger? Well, we have to compare the damage, right? So what we're going to do is we have to compare these two damages, like so. And I'm going to remove all this white space. All right, so we have to compare these two damages somehow. And which one is stronger? Well, it's the one that has greater, more, damage. So we'll say this, right? If the new weapon has more damage than the old one, then what we're going to do for this if statement, right, is that we're going to produce the new one as said by the purpose, right? Otherwise, we're going to produce the old one, like so. So this should pass all those tests. And so they do. They pass all 8 tests for the side weapon here and this one here, right? Update equip of that also uses decide weapon. And we can play around with this in the REPL, right? So update equip. What if Harry Potter tries to equip a longsword, right? Well, if he tries to do that, then no, right? He's still going to have his wand. We're not letting him, or the game is not going to let him hold a longsword in his equip slot. All right. So I'm going to check myself off for those. Code body is done for everything. Test review and refactor. So I'm going to hit Control I to reindent everything. Save it. All right. So now let's turn this into a hand in. So it's going to be called update-equip, like so, and enter our password. And then we go to the website and make sure it passes the creator test as well. All right. And so it does. Anywho, that is about it for this one, and I will catch you in the next one.